Welcome to the Let's Slow Down Summer Series. I'm your host, Anne-Marie, and I'm here to help you surrender to summer with short weekly podcasts that focus on adding simplicity and ease to your life. As a young podcast, it helps if listeners like you submit reviews and share the show. So please pass this along to a friend or share it on Instagram, tagging Let's Slow Down 2023. Every summer, I read the book Simplicity Parenting, using the extraordinary power of less to raise calmer, happier, and more secure kids. This book was written by Kim John Payne, counselor and educator. Though back on episode 15, I was blessed to interview Payne, and we had a great conversation. And I encourage you to go back if you haven't listened to that episode yet, because there is so much in there. And it comes from the author himself. So it was really a privilege for me to have that opportunity to talk to him and meet him. And I just loved what we talked about. And I think that it could really benefit many of you. So if you haven't had a chance to listen, go back to episode 15. I will also link that episode in the show notes today. This book gives me somewhat of a reset as a parent, but also as a person, because it has lots of tools and strategies to live a simpler life. So I'm going to spend some time talking about this today. And if you're not a parent, that's okay. The foundation of this book really is how to simplify and get back to core values, help build meaningful relationships. These are lessons and tools that can benefit everyone. I like to reach for this book at this time every year to prepare myself mentally for the upcoming school year with my children, and also just help me kind of regroup after the summer and, before a new year begins. I've always considered September to be the new year, growing up on a school calendar, and then I was a teacher after that. So September to me is always a bit of a rebirth and a new year. So today I'm just going to spend a few minutes going through this book. I thought that this would be a great time to share some of my favorite parts of this book. So here we go. The book opens with a quote from Henry David Thoreau. "Go confidently in the direction of your dreams. As you simplify life, the laws of the universe will be simpler." Kim John Payne talks about how we determine the rhythm of our days and set a pace. And he's right, but we also forget. We forget that we call the shots. We get caught in the rat race until one day it often feels like life is controlling us rather than the other way around. With one responsibility to the next, rushing around so much, eating, quick meals in the car, going to sleep late. I've been there and I've wondered, how did I get here? You don't even know. You just end up there all of a sudden. It just seems to happen. All of it happens with good intentions and love at the heart of it, but it still happens. You still end up in this place where you feel like it's too much. And even if you're lucky enough to have too much of all good things, it can still be too much, and too much can have a lot of negative repercussions on your life and on the lives of those children that we are raising. So Payne reminds us as adults that our children don't need any fancy training. This world makes us think that we do. Really, we need a lot of common sense, and we need to be present for our kids. Our kids pick things up naturally and in their own time. We can't rush them. We can't force it. We can't control it, just like we can't control a lot of other things in our life. As the years go on, circumstances change, we get older, our family looks different. Our children are slowly turning into the people that they are destined to be. And as parents, our job is to guide our kids to hear and listen to their own intuition, stand on their own 2 feet, not ours, theirs, go off into the world and make their own decision. And we hope that they're good ones. Make good choices is what I always kind of kiddingly yell as my kids get on the bus, but we can only hope, right? We hope that our homes can be a solid, nurturing foundation that provides an environment for the kids to learn these life lessons and thrive. And in doing so, we thrive as a family and on a larger scale as a society. Payne says the rest and rejuvenations that we want from our homes are getting harder to find. And I couldn't agree more. I feel like we need to fight for it, hold on tight. And guys, these aren't the kind of things that we're going to go find in Home Goods or in a store or online. This is a feeling. This is a feeling, and this is a energy that we're creating. He talks about how overwhelming and just downright stressful things have gotten with technology blurring the lines of work and home, children getting overbooked with activities and overloaded with stuff. It's eroding our motivation and our well-being, all of us, our kids and us adults. He mentions the story of the frog that gets dropped into boiling water and how it will struggle to get out. But did you know that if you put a frog in a pot of cold water and slowly heat it to the boiling point, that frog will remain still without any signs of struggle? Payne talks of the hundreds of families he's worked with, and he believes that the pot we're in today as families is increasingly inhospitable for us all, but especially for our children. So, okay, this is not all doom and gloom at all. Now we're going to talk about ways in which simplicity parenting suggests that we can turn things around. Because again, remember, we have choices. Somewhere along the way, I have forgotten it many times. And maybe you don't feel like your life or your family is quite at this point that I've just described. But I know that I've been there many times, and I need to be incredibly intentional and mindful that I don't end up there again. It creeps back in. It creeps back in when we least expect it. So I'm going to try and summarize Simplicity Parenting's tips as best I can while keeping this episode on the short side as I've been doing all summer. The book encourages us to reduce the stresses, distractions, and choices, all different forms of clutter, in children's lives, in our lives. The strategies are effective and can restore a sense of ease and well-being. Payne wrote this book to help us realign our daily lives with the pace and promise of childhood and the dreams we hold for our families, for ourselves. The goal is to help you strip away many of the unnecessary, distracting, and overwhelming elements that are scattering our children's attention and ours and burdening their spirits. And again, even though this book was written with parenting children in mind, I think the same goes for all of us adults and our crazy, busy, out of control lives. He says to have moments of calm that can be both creative and or restful is a form of deep sustenance for human beings of all ages. Relationships are often built in these pauses, in the incidental moments when nothing much is going on. We all need those moments of calm, those pauses in the day to just be. And if this is at all resonating with you, I urge you to read this book. Guys, it truly changed my life. There's a lot in it. There are very few books that I read annually. This is probably the only one. There's so much in it, but I'll attempt to pull my favorite parts out and share them with you today. He says that he offers basically, it's like a menu. So you pick and choose what your family and what your life needs most, and you start implementing them straight away. The book addresses the why simplify, and opens with a quote by author Sarah Susanka. We are facing an enormous problem in our lives today. It's so big we can hardly see it, and it's right in front of our faces daily. We're all living two big lives, crammed from top to toe with activities, urgencies, and obligations that seem absolute. There's no time to take a breath, no time to look for the source of the problem. Throughout the book, there's many examples of families that have struggled with each of these areas and how simplifying helped them heal in countless ways. When you simplify a child's world, you prepare the way for positive change and growth. This preparatory work is especially important now because our world is characterized by too much stuff. We are building our daily lives and our families on the 4 pillars of too much. Too much stuff, too many choices, too much information, and too fast. And with this level of busyness, distractions, time pressure, and mental, physical clutter, children are robbed of the time and ease they need to explore their worlds and their emerging selves. And since the pressures of too much are so universal, we are adjusting at a commensurately fast pace. the weirdness of this too much actually begins to seem normal. If the water we are swimming in continues to heat up and we simply adjust as it heats, how will we know to hop out before we boil? And we protect the environment for childhood's slow, essential unfolding of self. This goes for us too, guys, all of us adults. The unfolding of ourselves can't happen, or it might not happen in the way that we want it to if we're rushing. Here, I'd suggest thinking about what areas of your life can benefit most from simplifying. And if this process is sounding enticing but so overwhelming, just pick one area that might benefit your family the most right now. And that's why I like to read this book every August, because it makes me think about the upcoming school year, and it challenges me to take time to consider where we're at as a family, sort of take the temperature. Where are we at here? How hot is this water getting? And what do we need most? These last few years, what my family has needed most is less and less of all of it. But it took a long time to get to this point of busyness and all the things, and it will not be completely repaired overnight or in a year. This took years to get here. So go slow, go at your own pace, and adjust one thing at a time. Interestingly, Payne talks about how he worked with children in war-torn countries, and also on the flip side, in affluent areas of England. And what he was struck by was the similarities in the problematic behaviors of these kids. As he looked closely at their lives, he realized that for both groups, the sanctity of childhood had been breached. Adult life was flooding in unchecked, privy to their parents' fears, drives, ambitions, and the very fast pace of their lives. The children were busy trying to construct their own boundaries, their own level of safety in behaviors that weren't ultimately helpful. He said it was actually similar to complex post-traumatic stress disorder. When our kids are little, we can do more to protect them by having certain conversations once they're asleep, or keeping the news off when they're around. But as they get older, they're bombarded by adult content through countless media sources, and even just discussions on the bus or at school at lunch. And that makes it a lot harder for kids to just stay kids. My heart aches for them, and also for the parents and teachers trying to rein it all in. But just knowing this can help us. It can help us help them. Payne says that a protected childhood allows for the slow development of identity, well-being, and resilience. He thinks one of the most important steps to the process is to define family values, your vision for your family and how you imagined it before you had children. If you don't have children, you can do this too. What were your dreams? Reclaim the images and hopes most central and dear to your heart. They aren't lost. We might think they are, but they're not. They just got covered up. Things got too busy and they got covered up. I find this exercise really hard because my mind gets so caught up in all the day-to-day, a lot of which is probably not even necessary. And it makes it hard to think clearly sometimes. We just get stuck in this cycle of the to-dos. But once you find the clarity, it can become the compass that will guide you along, and it will bring you back to the path that you want to be on. This shows you what you value, what inspires you, and helps you imagine where you want to go. Remember dreaming big, guys? Once upon a time, we all did that. But a lot of us adults forgot how. Payne reminds us these are things that we already know. We constantly have to remember, renew, and reclaim them as our own. Use the information that you glean from this personal discovery to notice the misalignment between what you imagined and you dreamed. Is there a disconnect there of what you thought your life would be, what you thought it would look like, and what it's become? That's okay. I'm sure there's a misalignment because we're human. So think about where you need to adjust. What do you need to do to move forward in a way that reclaims your hopes and dreams for yourself and your family? You don't have to address all of this head on immediately. In the beginning, it's important just to acknowledge it, just to be aware of it. And in terms of areas to change, Payne tells us that there's two categories. The first one is what is important, and the second is what is doable. And he warns us that usually what seems the most important usually is not. And what is the most doable is a good place to start. Because if you do enough that's easy, that you find doable, it will lead you to the important stuff and motivate you to keep going. And then once you're reacquainted with those dreams that you had, find a simplification regime that might help change course. It will help change course. Think about how simplifying might make room for a shift, a realignment of hopes and dreams for everyday life. Payne identifies 4 levels of simplification: the environment, rhythm, schedules, and filtering out the adult world. He's worked with many parents and claims that somehow they know where to begin to create the necessary space. That's our intuition, guys. He says very simple principles, gradually incorporated into a home, produce dramatic shifts in a family's emotional climate and their connection with one another. He relates it to a stream that is dammed by a pile of rocks that accumulated gradually. We all know how that goes, how things slowly creep into our lives and build up so gradually that they're unnoticed. However, the imbalance is not. It is felt. It is real. By reducing mental and physical clutter, simplifications increase a family's ability to flow together, to focus and deepen their attention, and to realign their lives with their dreams. Payne says so many choices and so much stimuli rob children of time and attention, and I argue that it does the exact same thing to us. Too much stuff deprives kids of leisure, the ability to explore their worlds. He reminds us that all children have their quirks. All people do, right? And that quirks or tendencies can be exacerbated by cumulative stress, which can be worrisome in a society that is often way too quick to judge, label, and prescribe. He talks of a study where 68% of children whose parents and teachers adhered to a simplification protocol went from clinically dysfunctional to clinically functional in only 4 months with no drugs. 37% of those children also experienced an increase in academic and cognitive ability. This protocol was so simple. It was building up their vitality and quieting down their stimulation. I realize this isn't the answer for everyone, but I'm mentioning this because I found this particular study very eye-opening. It just shows how power simplifying is. The book encourages the reader to imagine your home as a place where time moves a little slower, less cluttered, and more visually relaxing, with space and time for childhood, and with time for one another every day, as a place where play and exploration are allowed and honored, and as a place of having more ease as you begin to limit distractions and to say no to the stress of too much, too fast, too soon, as a sense of calm and security take hold, and becoming a place where those we love know it by virtue of our attention, protection, and appreciation. Again, not because we have the latest interior designs or paint colors or everything looks like a staged home that's about to be put on the market. Payne goes on to talk about the emotional support our children need, that parents need to provide the heroic consistency of lifelong love, and that our children will feel secure, knowing that when something's really up and they just don't feel right, you will notice and respond, and that your love will accommodate and look way beyond their less than best selves, that they are deeply known and instinctively cared for. And I want to add the word heard here. Let your kids feel heard. If you don't have kids, let your friends feel heard. Or even if you do have kids, let your friends feel heard. Let your spouses feel heard. Make space for them and actively listen. Stop what you're doing and focus on them so you truly hear them. Because another thing that we've lost in this fast-paced world of ours is the art of listening. It's absolutely an art, and it's essential in every relationship. As I'm saying some of these things out loud, I feel like they kind of sound obvious, but I think that they can really get lost in the shuffle if we aren't careful. And that's why I like reading this book. It's this present piece, staying mindful, staying present when you're overly busy and distracted, that is so hard to do, impossible at times. But we can do it. We can make changes and we can start acting on this. The last subject that I want to cover today is schedules. And I've mentioned this on the podcast many times. With 3 kids of my own, this one is near and dear to my heart because I struggle so much with balancing the schedules. With the extreme commitments that so many sports and activities demand these days, I find it very difficult to maintain any sort of balance in this area. Honestly, that's what inspired me to start this podcast and have these conversations. So Payne tells us to cross our kids' names off the race of childhood. Cross them off that sign-up form. And you have to laugh because I think he's nailed it. The race of childhood sign-up form. I don't think any of us intentionally put our names on there, but it happened. He suggests that by doing that, you open up time that can be used for rest and creativity, which is needed to balance out all the activities. Time for contemplation, stimulation, time for free, unscheduled play, for ordinary days, for interests that deepen over time. Time for boredom. Boredom is very healthy for all of us. And time for the joy and infinite passion of anticipation. We all need this time. Having every minute scheduled and accounted for is not healthy. It's no way to live, certainly not every day. For kids, for adults, for anyone. Just dream here for a minute. Imagine having unscheduled free time every single day, being bored once in a while. What can develop when there's time to dream? We need this. Our world needs this because I think there's so much that we all have inside of us to offer that never gets discovered because we don't have time to dream big or even at all. How about consciously balancing some of your crazier days with calm ones? This particular tip has been a game changer for me. Sometimes I recognize that there are just going to be days that are way busier than I'd like. I accept it, but then I balance it out by having a quiet day, and it makes such an impact on my well-being. Imagine appreciating that genuine interests and abilities actually take time to form. They're not instant, and that those develop over long periods of time and aren't forced, aren't hurried, and are more likely to become lifelong pleasures that way. And lastly, what a lifelong gift you will bestow by gently insisting on and modeling the importance of downtime and balance in daily life. In my opinion, this is one of the greatest gifts that we can give our kids. I didn't have this, and it took me 40 years to figure it out. So start sooner. Start now. I think I'm going to stop here. This has gotten a little longer than I had hoped. I apologize, but as you can probably tell, I'm really passionate about this stuff. I hope that you got something out of this book report today. Basically, I gave you a book report. So hopefully something here today inspires and helps you. And just remember that it is such a process and that it will take a while. Thinking and talking about it are a great place to start. Then find the easiest way to begin and just give it a go. See how you can make changes in your life. See how you can make a lasting impact and find a calmer, more freeing way to live. So thanks for listening today. I wish you a calm and peaceful day, and I hope that you'll read this book. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Let's Slow Down Summer Series. I hope you can take some time this season to enjoy a simple and intentional summer. Start living life on your own terms today.